Good afternoon, Nikhil, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a good day, and a warm welcome to everyone for our MSME Masterclass episode 15. Today, we're delighted to have with us a promising speaker in our captivating and insightful session. Our esteemed speaker today is Mr. Nikhil Jha, managing partner of Construwell Solutions Private Limited. Mr. Jha brings with him an impressive background with that spans over 2 decades in the construction industry. He began his career as a structural design engineer in a structural consultancy firm, gaining invaluable experience in various functions across the construction sector. This diverse exposure has enabled him to understand the intricacies and evolving needs of the industry. About 5 years ago, Mr. Jha took a significant step in founding Construwell Solutions Private Limited with a primary focus on meeting the increasing demands of the retrofitting industry. His vision was to address the changing dynamics of construction, particularly in the retrofitting industry, both in commercial and residential buildings. Under his leadership, the company has successfully completed a multitude of projects, tackling a variety of challenges and delivering exemplary work. In today's session, Mr. Jha will be sharing vast knowledge and experience about retrofitting buildings, primarily commercial and residential buildings. Without further ado, a warm welcome to Mr. Nikhil. It's nice having you.
Thank you so much. And good afternoon to everyone.
Thank you, Nikhil. It's nice having you here, sir. So I want to get started to understand a little more, sir. Could you maybe share a little about your journey and how you've become an expert in this space, in this construction and retrofitting space? Could you shed some light?
Basically, I started my career, as you've already pointed out, as a structural consultant. And my journey into retrofitting started with a mistake which we had committed in one of the projects. Not a mistake, I would say. There was a slight misinformation which we received. We were designing a very prominent building in Pune region. And there we had a utility building which was supposed to cater to the demand of the entire MEP requirement for the project. Okay, generally we have certain load criteria for a building when we are designing that particular building. And then the architects, they said a very exorbitant figure of the loading, which was like the U1 building, which we're talking about, utility building. That particular building was to get subjected to those loads. And we, having never seen that kind of loads on such a building, we revisited that entire thing. We reconfirmed with the architect, and they also said that probably this would not be the right figure. So there is some mistake. Let us assume the figures which is provided in the codal provisions and everything, and let us design this building. And eventually, when the building was constructed, after like 6-7 months, when the building is in full swing and we were to use it for the purpose it was intended to, we realized at that point in time that those loads which were shared by the vendors and the suppliers of the machineries, that were correct. And it was 10 times the value which we had considered. So very exorbitant loading was coming on those buildings. And since the building was constructed, those equipments were to fly down to that particular building. We had to retrofit that building to take those additional loads. And this is how we entered into that industry. We started designing that particular building. We learned a lot there because we have never seen that kind of loading in our. So basically, I don't know, the loading for that particular building was 70 kilonewton per square meter, for which it was to be designed. And we designed it for 10 kilonewton per square meter. So there was a vast difference. So we started retrofitting, and from the footing, columns, beams, slabs, everything was required to be retrofitted. And we did it over a span of, say, another 3-4 months. But then we learned a lot. And this is how the journey of mine as a retrofitting consultant started.
That's a fascinating and very challenging start of like retrofitting, where you realize there's something major about to change and there's a lot more happening. So on the same track, sir, along just like how you talked about the current challenge when you started out retrofitting, could you talk about like what is in general retrofitting, like for a general audience, if they want to understand what retrofitting buildings mean, and what are like the most significant challenges that you have probably faced when retrofitting older buildings, and how do you guys tackle them?
Okay, so let's talk about the bylaws a bit. See, the construction industry, and for that matter, the reality market is a very dynamic market. We all will agree to this fact. There are so many things which is involved, so much money, so much bylaws, and the involvement of government bodies, statutory bodies, that is all there in this particular field. Now, every, like, say, suppose we are living in a developing nation. What is happening is, at some portion the metro is getting implemented in a city, or some other rapid transit systems are coming, some other changes are happening. Every now and then the FAR or the FSI rules are getting changed. Extra construction is allowed for a particular builder because of the land they are giving for the development of the country or the city which they are living into. And that necessitates, like, basically, if there is an existing building which has some historical value and we want that particular building to stand, like, basically we want to restore, we want to keep it live. So that is one case wherein which we need the support of our techniques to retrofit that particular building so that it can stand for a longer period of time. Secondly, as the bylaws are changing and people are getting the benefit of additional FAR or FSI, so people, they need to increase the height or increase the usable area of that particular building, wherein which the probably the building would have been designed, say, or constructed, say, 20 or 30 years ago, and then we have to increase the floors or increase the area or change the usage of the building. So for example, we have very recently completed a building which was constructed as a mall. It is in Viman Nagar, Pune again. So that was constructed as a mall. It was Pulse Mall initially. But then the idea of mall didn't kick off very nicely. The occupants were not there. And client had made a huge investment in doing that particular mall. And multiplexes and everything was there inside that mall. So they wanted to change that particular building into a office or a commercial complex, and wherein which the entire usage was changing. So that kind of cases we are covering in the retrofitting. So we undertook that project, we retrofitted it, and we changed the entire dynamics of the building and we converted it into a commercial project. So these are the needs wherein which we might need to retrofit a building, that is additional spaces, additional floors if we want to erect, or we want to change the usage of the building entirely. All these cases would necessitate action wherein which retrofitting is required for that particular building. Now, as you rightly pointed out, challenges, and as you will understand by the virtue of the work which we are doing, and all these buildings are necessarily old. Like, very seldom it happens that we have a 5 or 10 years old building wherein which we need to retrofit. Mostly it is a old building wherein which we have faced a lot of challenges when it comes to the design detail of that particular building. We know, like, we don't know what kind of concretes are used, what kind of steel is used, what kind of reinforcement are put, what is the design criteria, how much capacity the columns are having, how much is the residual strength of that particular building. At many places, I'll say, we even don't find the drawings, like basically the basic drawing which is there for that particular building at the time when it was constructed, that also is missing. So we have to take many testings, we have to do so many studies, and a lot goes in before we undertook that project or undertake that project. Then a lot of thing goes into the design, wherein which we have to ascertain the capacity. We have to actually do a reverse calculation of the entire thing, and then we do a forward calculation of the future thing which is planned on that particular building. So there are two aspects to it. The first is, these are the challenges which we face in the industry, and the second thing is, that is the limitation of the, when we talk about the limitations of the retrofitting, this would be a limiting factor wherein which we have to rely on the data which we have accumulated, or we could check from the procedures or the testing method which is available at our hand. So that is the two things which I would want to mention.
That feels like a lot of challenges, especially a lot of testing, which feels like it's required since it's older buildings and anything can go wrong if you don't have all the details.
Exactly.
Since you mentioned an example of 5-year-old building, what is in general a range of age of a building that you retrofit? You try to retrofit?
Basically, when we talk about our organization, we have undertaken a building which was mostly 30 years old, and wherein which we have provided our services. But when we talk about retrofitting in general, I have given consultancy to ASI, Archaeological Survey of India, wherein which they wanted to, basically, there are really old buildings which has historical values and all. So, though as an organization we didn't do it, as a consultant I was working on those projects, and the ages of those projects were 150 years and plus.
Okay, now that's historical
So,
buildings.
so that has some different historical value and the importance, and that is the reason. And they have no option but to go for a retrofitting thing, and we can keep the building standing for a longer period of time.
Makes sense. But now that you're dealing with buildings of such age, things might be like the building's age, there might be a little impact on environment and such. How do you, when you're retrofitting buildings, incorporate sustainability into it?
Yeah,
And
now
how do
this
you
is
make sure
where
it does not have major impact on environment?
exactly. Now, this is where it gets interesting, really, really interesting. I'll tell you why. See, when the idea of retrofitting started, probably the understanding or the notion behind it was that the people, they just wanted to make use of the available resources or the advantages they have gotten from the government with an additional or increased FSI, or probably because of the business requirement wherein which they want to change the uses of the building. So this was the initial thought, but at the same point in time, when we talk about retrofitting, let's say assume we have a land parcel, okay, and there is a building which is standing on top of it. And now you have got an additional FAR and you want to construct a bigger building. And if the techniques of retrofitting was not available, what is the option? The option is to demolish that particular building, remove it completely, and then go for a new construction. Now you'll understand that first, the demolition of that entire thing, the debris which is generated, probably some part of the building is recyclable. We can always go for recycling like steel or metal component of that particular building. But mostly, like 90% of the material which is there in the building, it mostly becomes a landfill or a debris. Okay, so with this technique we are avoiding that. So first of all, you are getting an advantage wherein which we don't have to throw the entire thing which we had earlier erected. Okay, the second thing is, since now this existing thing is getting used and we are putting in additional floors and additional areas by using the same thing, so the second step would be the waste, the saving of fuel or the material or the resources which would otherwise required to erect the full facility. Okay, so that is not required. So basically it is, so the beauty of the entire system is that we make use of the existing thing. It is like recycling an entire building to its 100% potential and make use of the entire thing which is available to us. So that obviously has a very nice impact on the, though I told you very frankly that though the idea didn't started with this, but the sustainability and the retrofitting concept goes very nice, in hand kind of thing. It is gelling very nicely by the virtue of the work itself. At same time, the component which we require for the additional like creations, they there we generally try and see that the material which we are using, okay, so that has some recyclable value and all those things. So this is how we ensure the sustainability, and we can leave something for our future generations as well. Otherwise we would have consumed all the resources which is available to us for demolishing and erecting a fresh structure.
Yeah, makes more sense that demolition. It's like a lot of material which gets wasted in demolition.
Exactly.
And it's possible that there's a lot of dust and various other aspects which creates a lot of pollution and various other aspects. So it's more not worth it. But sir, now that you have been focusing on sustainability, how about older buildings which don't have certain aspects or maybe certain technological advancements in it? Could you tell me in the current trends, or what is kind of the technological advancements which has revolutionized the way of retrofitting older buildings? How do you achieve it with innovation?
So I would take you a little back on this. See, what is happening is the concept is relatively new. Okay, first the construction started, and over a period of time, people realized the importance of a retrofit thing. Though from ages, people are doing it one way or the other, intentionally or unintentionally. But then the full-fledged idea, it began around 30-40 years back. The concept of this entire thing came on a large scale, wherein which people took it commercially and started to make it viable. Now, when we talk about this, the advancements are happening. There are a lot of technological requirement in this particular field, and at the same point, the requirement is very varied. Like when we talk about the retrofitting, no, it's a very vast field, a big thing. Okay, and lot many technological requirement are there. For example, if you want to demolish a building, like say I'm changing the need of a building or the utility of a building, I would need to make some alteration to the existing structure. Okay, now say suppose I have say 10 columns, 20 beams and some slabs. I would have to do away with few slabs. Okay, and that to demolishing that particular slab in a way that the other structure is not disturbed or is not impacted. So we have various technologies available from that perspective, like diamond cutting we use. Okay, so we by using diamond methods we cut the slab without vibrations and we remove those components. Then there is hydro demolition, wherein which the concrete, by the pressure of water we can remove the concrete and everything, but the steel which is there inside the building will continue to stay, and then on that particular steel, by using some additional reinforcement or something, will recast the entire thing. So these technological advancements are required in order to take care of this. Now in normal building we don't use carbon fiber or composites to that extent, but in retrofitting it becomes essential to use for advanced metal, wherein which the strength criteria or the engineering properties of those materials are to a level wherein which it can be utilized for a retrofit project. We are extensively using carbon fiber wraps. We are extensively using stressed carbon tendons to keep the structure floating. This is mainly for the older structure also. So all these technological advancements are there, and a lot of thing is happening which is currently under development, and a lot of things we can see, like say suppose as I told you that this is relatively a new industry, but then a lot of technological advancements are still in progress, in pipeline, and we are making use of it. And in future I can say that after 10 or 15 years that would become a need of the time. Most of the projects will start going for a retrofit rather than complete redevelopment, and the technological advancement will also be there more at our hand at that point in time.
Makes sense. There's a lot of aspects in this niche industry that there's still growth for evolution in the innovation in the technology aspect. Since that now we have spent a lot of resources in trying to retrofit a building, how do you make sure that you create a balance between a cost effectiveness while making sure the integrity and the main structure's value stays, and probably even improve the value of the building in process?
So first of all, by the virtue of the work itself, there is a lot of advantage, and that is the reason people are selecting this method, because we are making use of the whatever available structure is there. So most of that structure in its original condition we are trying to use. Okay, then there is a lot of R&D which goes in. First step is that we try and keep the maximum portion of the existing building or the existing structure which we are trying to retrofit. The second aspect to it is that we do a lot of R&D thereafter. Like basically in a fresh building, what will happen is the architects have the flexibility to design it from the scratch. Now in our building, what we'll have to do is architects will have to really put down more of thought so that they make use of the structural aspect, the sizes of the spans of the building and all those things, and then incorporate a design wherein which all this could be utilized. Okay. Now this also requires a lot of attention. Then the second thing, apart from this, it is also important that now talking about the cost value, if I touch that point first, retrofitting from a general construction would be a little higher when it comes to the cost. But then making use of the existing thing and the resources which would otherwise would be required to demolish that thing, take the approvals, dispose of that entire material, take care of the entire thing. So end to end cycle, if we'll talk about at the end of the project, this becomes really cost effective. Okay, because of the advantages we have got. The second thing is many allocation. What happens is basically the demolition and then re-erection of a particular building probably is not possible also. Okay, there will be circumstances or the geographical conditions would be such, or the surrounding conditions would be such, that the demolition and entire that activity is not possible. So we have no other option but to go for a retrofit thing, do the retrofitting and make use of the existing thing. So when we compare all these aspects and we take into consideration all these things, then we have the advantage of the cost effectiveness, I would say, and the balance.
Yeah, that's the kind of balance we're looking at. That since you've been able to do such a level of efficiency and integration, is there any kind of situation where regulatory standards play a very crucial role, or like maybe even a roadblock for retrofitting projects? And how do you make sure that there is certain compliance with the regulatory bodies when it comes to retrofitting?
Okay, so basically, the normal statutory compliance is a prime requirement when we go for a retrofit thing. Now, when the government has allowed additional FAR, or for example, if you're changing the uses of a building, then we have to restart the entire activity of approval, statutory compliance, and everything. Because since the uses of the building is changing, or the additional floors or FAR is getting introduced in that particular building, it becomes really necessary to reinitiate the entire process and revalidate all the things. Now, the challenge is, like, what happens is basically for a fresh building, we have all the data available with us. Okay, the design data, the architectural aspect, or whatever is required for a fresh building, it is readily available. In our case, we have to redo the entire thing. First, prepare the architectural, all the layouts of the building. Then what happens is we have to do the back calculation, as I initially informed, that we have to do the entire calculations and everything. And this is required for the submission. Like basically when we are approaching a government body or a statutory compliance body, they would demand all the details and everything. And there where it becomes a little challenging, but at the end of the day, we do all the calculations, we have the reverse thing available with us, and then we incorporate all the R&D and everything, and we go for a fresh approval process, wherein which the requirement, if it is getting fulfilled, and since the government body only has approved the additional FAR, so that is, it becomes convenient, but a lot of effort is required to get it through. And at the end of the day, once the compliances and everything is in place, then only we undertake the projects.
I understand that the legal barrier the regulatory barrier is not as huge as I considered it. So in such cases, like I want to ask a question extending to the challenges I was asking about, is maybe since you have worked on retrofitting buildings for over like half a decade right now, could you maybe share any particular memorable project, maybe very challenging retrofitting project that have you guys successfully completed?
I want to mention one of the project which was very dear to me. Why? Because this particular building is in Indore, Madhya Pradesh, and this was a mall which was erected around 15 years back, and it was a huge building. Total area is 17 lakh square feet for this building. And this building, when we retrofitted it and everything was done, all the contractors, vendors, we worked together, we erected the building, and now it is the largest building of Madhya Pradesh currently. It was erected 15 years back. At that point in time, such a huge mall could not have functioned properly in a city like Indore. So clients who were owning that building had no option but to close it or shut it down basically. So in an unfinished condition, that particular mall, it was shut. For 15 years, that particular building was laying like that. And after 15 years, Phoenix Mills, they purchased that property and they wanted to convert it into a fresh mall. The challenges were so high that, because what had happened is, as I've also pointed out earlier, the design details were not there. And the second thing is, because of the scale of the building or the kind of environment and the surroundings, the survey of that particular building was really difficult. We had spent a lot of time in doing the survey to understand and ascertain the condition of the existing elements. And then a lot of effort also went into redesign the entire thing. Initially, it was all a closed kind of structure which was getting erected. Then when the reconstruction started or the retrofitting started, architect wanted to have an openness in the existing building. So all this was there, and a lot of effort and a lot of time went into that. And at that point in time, it was frustrating as well. Well, we were getting frustrated quite often that how this will happen and that. But why it is memorable is when we actually finished the project. And if you'll also Google now, it is named Citadel Mall, Indore. If you'll Google it, you'll see the kind of building it turned out to be. And people who were staying around, they could not believe that this particular building will be converted into what it is currently. And after that, a lot many people have came, discussed with me that how we could do it. And they still don't believe that it is the same building which was there. I would urge the audiences also, if they want to Google, just put Citadel Mall Indore. You look at the mall, you'll understand the beauty, and you please keep in mind that that particular building is 15 years old, and in dilapidating condition, it was falling down, and that the kind of structure it had turned out to be. So it's the biggest success story for me, and that project is really dear to me also.
That's a very fascinating story, because I don't think people even in Indore would believe that this was not a demolished building, but something which was built over it with it. So there's so much flexibility that I can see that in retrofitting. Is there certain kind of limitations that how far you can retrofit a building? Like maybe even change the whole structure, maybe you can't change the foundation of it. What do you think are certain limitations in the current era?
See, obviously, you're right, asking a very right question. Basically, whatever is erected previously, and we are trying to strengthen that building and then have additional floors on top of it or change the uses of the building entirely. The old structure which is there, it plays a very vital role. It was built with a consideration. Let's say, suppose for example, if a 10-story building is there and now additional 40 floor needs to be erected on top of that, it will not make a sense, nor economically and nor it is viable. Then the existing structure, the strength of that particular elements, the columns and beams, and how old it is. Because in RCC structure, there is an inherent problem of, if I don't know how much interested you guys are in chemistry, but when the iron gets converted into rust, that is Fe, when it becomes Fe2O3, the volume increases by 10 times. Okay. Let's say, suppose 1 liter of steel is there, the rebar, which would be Fe2, and it get completely rusted. So the final product will be Fe2O3, that would be 10 times the volume of that is 1 liter will become 10 liters. And that kind of carbonation, if it has started in the building, we advise clients or the people to generally go for demolition, because at that point in time, it is not advisable to repair the structure, because once the carbonation or corrosion has started happening, we try and check for the amount of corrosion which has happened. If it is under the permissible limits, we try and do the retrofitting. If not, then it will not be possible. So these are the basic limitations: the capability of the existing structure, the condition of the elements, the condition of reinforcement, and the RCC. So these always plays a very vital role in deciding the future of the building. So these are the basic limitations for this.
So in general, based on your experience, when you are retrofitting buildings, how important or how often do you work on reinforcing the foundation of the building?
See, if a load is like, I'll tell you, I was a structural consultant also initially in my career. Generally, when we design a building, we take around say 20-25% additional capacity or 30% additional capacity. Okay, so if increase is very slight, like 1 or 2 floor we want to increase, probably the reinforcement of foundation would not be required. We don't want to go there, excavate, and then do the entire retrofitting of the foundation, starting with the retrofitting of the foundation and then come up basically. But if the requirement is say more than 25%, we definitely have to go back, do the excavation for the existing building, probably introduce new columns and foundations altogether. Like basically, we don't try and touch the older foundations. We will have some new foundations and new columns only to support the existing structure and the new structure which is coming on top of it. In addition to that, if it is required, we'll also increase the sizes of the footing. We'll also try and check the substrata conditions, subsoil conditions basically, that how well it is there, what is the effect it has caused so far, like 20-30 years the building is standing. So what are the effects and all those things. And we want to increase the size of the footing. We do retrofitting of the footings, and then only we can go for the additional construction. So first case, basically up to 25%, I would say it would not be required, and it's very cumbersome also. After say increase of 25%, it becomes essential that we take care of the existing foundations also, or rather introduce new foundations and columns.
It makes sense. That kind of clarifies my doubt on, reinforcing the foundation of a building. So while you're on that, thanks for sharing so much about it, the knowledge about retrofitting. I have a final question from my side, which is, where do you see the future of retrofitting goes? What do you think are like the future trends you foresee in this field of commercial and residential building retrofitting, maybe even historical buildings too? And how do you think as a professional in this field should prepare for these changes?
If you'll see, and there it like becomes really important for us to understand that the kind of boom, the development which is happening in our country or the other countries for that matter, the resources, it is becoming really, really important. Like say for a city like Bombay, Pune, Gurgaon, Delhi, all this, traffic conditions, the transportation. I'm doing a project recently in Chennai. Transporting concrete from the concrete plant to my site is a nightmare. Okay, now understand this, that the building is in a depleting condition, or you want to change the usage, or you want to have additional floors on top of it. Then first you handle the debris, you handle the demolition and all those regulations which comes along with the demolition requirement, which is put forth by the government agencies. So complying to all, and after that you doing the demolitions and everything, taking care of those debris, it becomes a nightmare and it'll continue to grow. Okay, the population is increasing and everything is happening, so it will continue to grow. So people are more focused towards retrofitting now rather than doing a fresh construction in place of a existing building. Second thing is the investment which they have made, they would really want to utilize that investment. And the last and the foremost important thing is that the demand is growing day by day, but the construction and these activities are becoming really, really difficult. Over a period of say 5 or 10 years, the particular construction industry which we are mentioning here is mainly driven by the labors. Okay, and that would become a bigger challenge coming say 5 years or 10 years down the line. It will become really difficult to have the right labor for your work. So people, they want to bring down the requirement of labor on their project, and if you want to go for say demolition also, disposal also, then a fresh construction also, obviously the requirement of labor is very, very high, wherein which you can take care of that particular building by utilizing a smaller labor force and retrofit that building and make use of the entire structure. So this eventually is gonna happen, and this is the future, and more building is coming for retrofitting now. Initially the people, they were like, we will demolish and do a new or a fresh construction, but now the technology is available, technological advancements are happening, and people are more becoming inclined towards the retrofitting. The future is very bright, and it will continue to grow, that is for sure. Coming 10-15 years, you'll see a real boom in retrofitting industry.
I think that's great. There's so much scope in this retrofitting industry, and thank you for teaching me and everyone so much about retrofitting.
Not teaching, just sharing.
So while that kind of ends the questions from my end, anyone in the audience, if they have questions from your end, you can please post it in the Q&A section. While people do that, before the session before this session, we have gotten a couple of questions in from audience beforehand. So I just wanted to ask those couple of questions. So from Mahesh Shetty from Shetty Pipes and Tubes, for homeowners who are interested in retrofitting their residential houses, independent houses, what are the first steps that they should take or consider before retrofitting?
See, it is really important to understand the existing structure. When we are going for a retrofitting, it is really important to understand the existing thing which we had at our hand. Okay, that's one thing. Second thing is, if the retrofitting is only to increase the area or to have additional floors, then the requirement is completely different, wherein which, and for a smaller building, as we spoke about, you'll realize that if a building is say 20-story high and we are going for an additional 2 floors or 3 floors, the addition is only 10 or 12% of the existing structure. Where in which, when we are talking about, say, a bungalow or a independent houses, there are existing one or two floors, and again we are going for two additional floors. That is a 50% increase in the existing structure. So it is really important to understand the structure which is there at our, like, which we are trying to treat. That is one thing. And second thing is, if we are trying to increase the area and everything, then the increase would be substantial. If there is some problem in the existing building wherein we want to take care of certain elements, that has become really cheap these days. You just need to find the right consultant, they will guide you, and locally a particular building can be treated. Now, initially there was a huge amount of work which was required to be carried out, but nowadays it is possible. Say suppose only one or two columns you want to retrofit, or you want to take care of only one single beam or a slab. That all, because of the evolvement of technology, it has happened. It is possible now. You just have to get the right person, and then he will guide you that what kind of technology you can use and retrofit the building. Now, having said this, I would also want to add one thing. Say the limit of the building or the structure, they start coming in once you go, say, 5 floors or higher. Okay, this is very interesting in our industry. For, say, 1 floor, 2 floors, or probably 3 floors also, the limit of those materials, the capacity of the RCC or the brick wall or the block wall is very high when compared to a single or a double story building. So if you want to just increase the size or FAR, you just need to get it checked, check the structure, and then you can very well, very easily you can go for additional floors. That is by the virtue of the material. I hope I am not too technical on this. I hope I clarified the doubt.
No, I think that should probably clarify my doubt, and I think going more technical really helps with understanding the details of such. So we have a question from Mr. Harish from Sharma Enterprises.
Yes.
Could you maybe elaborate on how retrofitting contributes to energy efficiency when you retrofit an older building?
When we talk about energy efficiency in terms of the, like, say, suppose an existing building is there, okay, it was constructed, say, 20 years back. That point in time, the requirement, the energy regulations or the requirement, like, say, suppose BEE came afterwards, and all those regulations came, which, and wherein which we also realized the importance of energy conservation. Okay, it was not there, say, 20 years or 25 years ago. That concept itself was not there, or people were not that inclined towards the, conservation of energy or bijli bill for that matter. They were not concerned. Now, when we are taking a retrofitting building, you can modify since modifying the entire structure, there are many aspects of that building which gets modified automatically with the new construction. And that definitely by use of, sustainable products, by use of energy efficient products. Because, say, for an example, I'll tell you, initially a building is created or made, say, 10 or 12 floors with a water or a plumbing scheme. When we are retrofitting that particular building, we are going for an additional 10 floors. Okay, then the entire plumbing scheme needs to be changed for the existing building and the older building. So if the older building was there, it would continue to have that, poor ratings of energy efficiency. While we are retrofitting, we automatically go for higher, specifications and those kind of products, which modifies the older thing also, and wherein which we ensure that the energy efficiency of the older structure is also getting increased. And that happens automatically. Since we're doing that, it automatically gets taken care of.
I think that makes sense, and I hope that answers Mr. Harish's question. We have a question from Deepak from DC Enterprises. What kind of ROI can an owner expect when retrofitting the property? Will there be an increase in the market value in the property? Are there any kind of tax benefits? Various, basically a
To be
financial
honest,
question.
tax part I'll not be able to take care, but obviously, since you're increasing the size or you're retrofitting the project, and that brings to the last point which we discussed. Since you are increasing the energy efficiency, the overall usability of the building, you are taking care of the architecture, you are taking care of the defects the current building was having. So it is bound to increase the market value of that particular property. Having said this, if the amount of retrofitting is too much, now that concept of retrofitting has not gone very well with the people. So there are certain people who I have seen that for a highly retrofitted building, they are little worried to make use of that particular building. So if to a certain extent, if the retrofitting is within the limits and everything, that will definitely increase the value, and you can take care of the, and for you also, like for the end user also, it becomes really beneficial because of the increased efficiency and less troubles over the period.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Considering related to value and return on investment, I think it's retrofitting will be a way more cost efficient and the best way they could handle an older building if they are to work on it. So, in such kind of situations where you're retrofitting and you're handling huge erected buildings, construction, and various aspects, I'm sure there might be all some or the other time where there are unforeseen circumstances which pop up, unforeseen structural damage, issues. If any of such things happen, how do you approach them and how do you maybe prepare for them ahead of time?
Exactly. This is a very valid point which is raised. See, while we are doing the survey of an existing building, we are doing it through NDT, which is a non-destructive test mostly we carry out on the building. And then we arrive on certain results. And based on that, we do the entire design, development, research, whatever we want to do. We do on those available data. And surprises, they do come our way. Okay. And to be honest, on every project, multiple surprises comes, and you can never be prepared for those surprises because you're never aware that what kind of surprise it would be. We were taking care of one hospital building in the state of Maharashtra, and we had assumed that these are the columns. Basically, it was a small hospital building wherein which the owner of that building, they had purchased it, that old property, and they opened their hospital there. After a certain period of time, they wanted to increase the area of the hospital. They received the requisite approvals and everything, and they invited us to do the retrofitting. We tested everything, we did everything, and after the construction began, you will be surprised to know that there were around say 20 columns. Out of that 20 columns, 10 were having no reinforcement, zero reinforcement. It was just erected, which no one of us could have seen. So then we had to, and that is the case which happens like on all the retrofitting project, one or the other thing comes. So the project is very dynamic in nature, and you have to be really prepared to understand the current condition. And that is the reason it takes a little longer than a time period than a conventional project, wherein which you need to have the right people on site who can take decisions and who should have the right experience of retrofitting, because once the problem comes, they should be able to identify, understand, and solve that problem. But yes, surprises, they do come, and we have to be ready to address those surprises.
No surprises is the best surprise you can have. In this aspect and all, in such career path of retrofitting and niche, maybe at the like as we come to end of session, I wanted to ask, what do you think is the most rewarding feeling you feel in this retrofitting business, and what do you think? What would you give like a suggestion or people who might be looking at this industry space and maybe hesitant or trying to see if they are also interested in this career path?
I'll answer the last question of yours first. When it comes to the entry into this particular market, this is the right time to enter. I'll tell you, always the right time is always, like anytime you are most welcome, but this is the right time. Why? Because the knowledge has just started sprouting, like it just started increasing. That is one thing. The demand is more in the future. The growth pattern is more than 150% for this particular industry. For example, if last year we were having 1 or 2 projects in one city for retrofitting, this year it would become 5, next year it would become 25. Mm-hmm. So numbers are still very less, but if you'll see growth-wise, exponential growth is happening. Second thing is, since this is a niche market, when it comes to construction, anyone can start construction, but then this becomes something which is highly technological, and a person has to have the right technical information in order to take care of the existing building. So the players are less, the right peoples are less, the market is growing exponentially, and then there will be so much project to handle that growth is guaranteed. If the right approach is there, the growth is guaranteed. So this is one thing. And the second thing is, one should be ready, or one should be, this is what is going to happen to the market because of the tightening regulations, the noise pollution, the air pollution, the sustainability, and all those things. This is the way ahead. Like this is and this is what is going to happen in the future. Okay, most of the land space is already occupied. It is not that initially there was so much land available, you could always buy a fresh land and you do a fresh construction. Slowly that space is disappearing. So you are left with the existing building, and then you could not do much with the existing building. You have to go for this particular thing. So this is a way forward in the coming future.
Understandable, sir. And as such a way forward, I hope everyone in this session, I think that kind of wraps up with the kind of questions I have, really, Mr. Nikhil Jha. And thanks for, kind of enlightening us over retrofitting. And as we come close to the very end of today's episode, I would like to extend a warm, heartfelt thanks to Mr. Nikhil Jha and to share all of this incredible experience.
I hope the time we spent was usable. I don't know. I tried my level best, but I'm not sure how much benefit I could have been to others. But anyone, if anything is there afterwards also, you please feel free to contact me. I'll be happy to do that.
Absolutely. To our audience, I hope today's session was insightful. Hope today's experience is something that you learn, carry forward. And if you guys ever want to get in touch with Mr. Nikhil Jha about any kind of conversations, please, if you feel free to drop an email to me, maybe I can help connect you with Mr. Nikhil Jha and you can discuss about the future. For now, thank you for everyone. Today's episode comes to an end. I hope to stay connected with all of you and see you all in the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you so much.